Hey, Revere 0311 here. Here we are at the Rock Island Arsenal Museum. We are at Rock Island Arsenal in Rock Island, Illinois. Yes. So one of the most important things I've already learned I've already went inside and looked around, but this thing really brought my attention because in Iowa, at the University of Northern Iowa, they have 2 Spanish cannons, and at the Denison, this town in Iowa, at the county courthouse, they also have a Spanish cannon made in about 1792, and this one is also a Spanish cannon. So as soon as we pulled up, I saw this cannon, and I'm like, why are there so many Spanish cannons in and around Iowa? Well, the nice gentleman in there, the historian, was telling me that at the end of the Philippine insurrection, Spanish and American War, they brought a bunch of those cannons back and they stored them here in Rock Island, and they do have records of them sending these cannons out throughout basically the nearby area and also the country, and providing them to courthouses and such things as that. But yeah, this is an 18th century Spanish cannon. It is a 26-pounder, and they say it comes from Manila in the Philippines. So it's been kind of nice to see this throughout the last couple of years. I've been seeing these cannons pop up, and now I have a general idea where they come from. But yeah, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the museum that we just went through, kind of like hitting all the highlights and all the super interesting information they have here. This whole museum is amazing. If you can make it down to it, it just got redone and reopened recently, and it's a great museum. It's got lots of history. It includes the #1 Springfield, a #2 serial number M1 Garand. It's got all that history, and it goes through the whole process. So if you are in or around the Quad Cities area, Rock Island, Illinois, come out to this museum and see all this history. First off is we have this Spanish cannon. It is a 26-pound cannon that was originally part of the Spanish water battery and the fortifications defending the walled city of Manila in the Philippines. And I've seen a couple of these in Iowa, actually. One's at the University of Northern Iowa, and one is at the city courthouse in Denison, Iowa. So you can see the regal crest right there. But yeah, that's very interesting. So here's that other Spanish cannon. Is the Pedro III de Aragon, named for Peter the Great, King of Aragon, 1240 to 1285. This was also a 26-pound cannon. So not 1830s, but 1856. And you can see its name right there. As we come back, you have your Spanish crest. Sevilla, so this one was cast in Seville. I don't know what that means. And then 1857, that's your date of cast. So yeah, we have our 1793 produced cannon that we just came from, and then we have our Spanish 1857 cast cannon. Both 26-pounders, both captured in the Spanish-American War, and both captured in the Philippines. So when you first enter, they're going to have this list of all the historical armories and arsenals that the U.S. government has had. And as you can see, there is a lot of them spanning all over. Beginning in the American Revolutionary War, you see pretty famous ones like Springfield, Rock Island, but there's also some other ones like Picatinny, Detroit arsenals in there, Vancouver, and you can see all the different government arsenals that have been in the country throughout its history. So that was a map showing the historical locations, and this is the current organic industrial base. There's 23 arsenals, depots, and ammunition plants that manufacture, reset, and maintain Army equipment. But not just Army equipment, they also do other branches of the service as well. So off the bat, let's just look at this beautiful brute of a firearm. This is a Rappahannock Forge wall gun created circa 1777. What's a wall gun? Well, the wall guns fill the tactical gap between a shoulder arm and a cannon. The swivel attached to stock allowed the gun to rotate 360 degrees and move up and down. So you're not expected to carry this into battle, but if you're in the defense or you're conducting a siege, and you're not moving around a lot, you can utilize this firearm to have that good standoff distance to engage enemy forces. But look at the caliber of that barrel. I have no idea what that is for caliber-wise, but it's definitely a big boy. During the American Civil War is when the island is first put to Army use. It's used as a prisoner of war camp for captured Confederate soldiers. General Buford plays an instrumental role at the beginning of the island's history. And as you can see, there's his sword he carried at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Next, we're going to be looking at this Allen conversion, this model of 1866. So what they did was they took a single-shot muzzle loader and turned it into a single-shot breech loader with existing military stores. It's kind of interesting because the U.S. government had done this with the model of 1816, which was a flintlock. Then they converted it to percussion, again, using what was already in military stores. So it was a good way to save some money. Take your current stock and modernize it. Besides the small arms, Rock Island Arsenal is also providing a lot of other needed supplies for the U.S. Army. Like they're creating the hospital knives, bayonets, you have packs, you have cartridge box, you have stirrups. They also had so many cannonballs from the end of the Civil War that they're able to make, that local artisans were able to make fences and door hinges left over from all that ammunition surplus. Next is probably one of my favorite photos. I wish I understood more about it. I'm not that much of a gearhead, but it's from the inside of one of the workshops. And you can see all the large gears and the pulleys and all the other things that were being powered by the Mississippi River. So right here is an American Krag carbine and an American Krag rifle. Rock Island Arsenal did not produce these, but they did clean and repair them. They did this with the help of a 40 horsepower engine and boiler powered by a line of 20 polishing wheels and 2 lathes for the repair and the refurbishment of the rifles. The men and boys were able to clean approximately 600 rifles per day at a cost of about 68 cents per rifle. So think about that. So up next, we have the U.S. Army's first steel rifled breech-loading field gun, and that is this. This is the model of 1890, and it was the primary artillery piece used during the Spanish-American War and the Philippine insurrection. So this is a single-shot, 3.2-inch caliber rifled cannon, and it can fire that round at about 1,600 feet per second to 6,500 yards. Or for my European listeners, because I know I have a couple of you, it's 81 millimeter round firing at 514 meters per second for 5,970 meters total range. The museum does a great way of showing like the changes in times, because right next to that modern field piece, you have a horse. This is a model horse, and it shows the saddle and the saddlebags and all the other accoutrements that would go with being in the cavalry. That is produced by the U.S. Army. Now let's look at what I would consider to be the holy grail inside of the museum. It's a U.S. rifle, caliber 30, model 1903, otherwise known as a 1903 Springfield. What makes this one unique is that this is Springfield serial number 1. So this particular rifle has brought more questions than it has brought answers, unfortunately. So I've heard 2 different versions of the story. Story number 1 is that the rifle, as soon as it was produced at the Arsenal, never was issued. It is as it was when it left the workshop floor. And then the second one, which I read on the American Rifleman website, was that it was actually it was issued and sent out to the Western Front in 1918. It was then relocated or resurfaced at a camp in Brest, France. And then there's a paper trail that extends for the rifle until 1925. In 1931, there was a museum fire where the rifle was, and it was pretty damaged, so it had to be restored. But that's kind of the question, is because when you look online on the American Rifleman article about the Springfield number 1, the gun looks different. It has a different front sight post. It has a different stock. There's just things that are not the same. So did they take that gun and they restore it to how it would have been originally? The gun also has a hatcher hole. So yeah, if anyone has any answers, I'd love to hear. Almost as important as the rifle is the infantryman's gear. And this actually kind of looks like a SIF issue in a way, but this is kind of where it starts. In 1909, Rock Island Arsenal comes together and they do the Infantry Equipment Board. And the purpose of this is for considering the question of equipment and load of the infantry soldier. So what is the soldier going to be carrying? How is he going to be carrying it? What's the material of that his gear is going to be made out of? These are all the questions, and they're trying to reduce weight. I mean, that's a constant. You're always trying to reduce weight. You're trying to make it more comfortable. You're trying to make it, as versatile as possible. You're going to see if you can get as many uses out of things. If you can have one piece of gear do 3 different things, then awesome. You're trying to almost make a Swiss Army knife of gear and versatility and usability, and also needs to be durable, so you don't have to constantly be replacing it. I mean, for me, this is probably one of my most interesting pieces of the museum because it almost looks like a SIF loadout. If you've been in the infantry, you notice kind of the similarities and differences throughout history. But like, this is what these guys got issued, and it looks pretty similar. You can see that through line to today. So the board comes up with the model of 1910 haversack and pack carrier, and it represents one of the largest leaps forwards in terms of ergonomic design of any piece in the kit. Previously, the haversack and sleeping roll was little more than a shoulder-slung bag carrying a blanket, clothes, and a tent. This new pack-style design, worn on the back, distributed weight more evenly and enhanced soldiers' fighting efficiency by reducing both their overall fatigue and various impediments to aiming, reloading, and firing. Breaking down the full equipment, this is going to consist of a rifle, 100 rounds of ammunition, an entrenching tool, bayonet, first aid packet, filled canteen, haversack with rations, one pair of socks, toiletries, and a pack. The pack consists of a pack carrier, a blanket, a shelter tent and a half, and a poncho. Moving on into the marching equipment, this is going to consist of a rifle, 100 rounds of ammunition, entrenching tool, bayonet, first aid packet, filled canteen, haversack with rations, one pair of socks, and toiletries. Main difference being in the normal equipment, marching equipment, as there is no pack. The final iteration is the fighting equipment, and this consists of the same articles from the marching equipment with the addition of 2 bandoliers of information of 60 rounds each. This gives the infantrymen 220 rounds of total ammunition. I found that pretty interesting because during my time in Afghanistan, I actually carried 7 mags of 30 rounds, which gave me about 210 rounds of ammunition. So almost 100 years later, after 1910, because I was in Afghanistan in 2010, carrying the same amount of rounds. So the next part of the museum is going to take a look at Rock Island Arsenal's involvement in World War I and what they made. They were one of the smallest producers of munitions during the First World War, with a peak capacity of around 1,000 shells per day. The museum makes a note that women were employed in the fuse departments because the delicate work required small and steady hands. Between 1917 and 1918, 167,000 artillery rounds were produced in a multi-purpose plant at Rock Island Arsenal. So that's not to say that Rock Island Arsenal did not have a large impact on the First World War. They definitely did. They produced over 20,000 unique items that were made at the arsenal. And right now I'm just going to list some of the ones that you don't really think about, but they're paramount to winning a war. They produced 858,000 haversacks, 649,000 canteen covers, 354,000 knives, 300,000 pack carriers, 1.5 million bacon cans, 74,000 artillery harnesses assembled, 218,000 spoke shoes and plates. They also made gun carriages for the French and Americans. They made battery and store wagons, 4.7-inch recoil cylinders, forge limbers. They're making all of that here at the arsenal. Everything to outfit the American Expeditionary Force that is overseas in France fighting the war against Imperial Germany. Rock Island Arsenal is also pretty unique because them, along with Springfield Arsenal, were one of the only 2 federal arsenals that produced the model of 1903 rifle leading up to and during World War I. Rock Island Arsenal from 1904 to 1921 produced over 346,000 of these model 1903 Springfields. During World War II, the arsenal manufactured another 85,000 Springfield rifles. Here we have a pristine first model 1919 A4 Browning gun machine gun barrel, and I love all the words on it. So it says proof fired October 20th, 1936, function fired 100 rounds October 21st, 1938. First Browning MG barrel made at Rock Island Arsenal. So that's one of the proofing barrels that they had. Here's an example of some of the other guns they have in the cases that are around the museum. You got this Mark I model 1903 with the Pedersen device. Pedersen devices were going to be added to your 1903 Springfield and turn your bolt action rifle into a semi-automatic sort of assault weapon of the time. And there's the pouch that the Pedersen device would have gone in. And here's an example of that 30 caliber Pedersen device ammunition. And then here's your holster from which the Pedersen device was stored. Next, we have this semi-automatic rifle designed by Rock Island Arsenal in 1909. leading up until the M1 Grand, if you've watched Forgotten Weapons, he covers this quite extensively. There's a lot of different weapons and a lot of different ways and ideas to how to get your weapon to go from a bolt action to a semi-automatic or self-loading rifle variant. And here's some more examples of how they went. So that's your Johnson rifle on the far left, your Pedersen rifle right there on the left. You have a Thompson auto rifle, and then your M1 Grand rifle, serial number 2. So this is the U.S. government trying to pick a semi-automatic rifle to be used, and the M1 Grand obviously wins out. You do see the Johnson rifle in World War II with the Marines, and it does see a little bit of combat. They show up at gun shows every once in a while. Here's a close-up of that number 2 M1 Grand, and yeah, that's pretty awesome to see that piece of history. All throughout the museum, it's not really even just about the firearms, but it's about the whole process of production. So if you're kind of interested in production, engineering, mass production, this is a great museum, especially because of all the information for World War II, how the whole industry was spread throughout the Midwest, the upper Midwest, and throughout the entire country, really, but how different pieces were made in different parts, and then they were assembled at one place. Kind of like how you would make a barrel here, you'd make a limber there, a carriage there, a loading machine there, and you could bring it to Rock Island Arsenal, and you could put it all together. But yeah, as we kind of scroll down, seeing just major information about things that are produced. And here's an example of just all the variations of equipment that is going to be needed for a 20th century army. I was actually just reading a book about the fitting out the Continental Army, and they had around 800 individual items unique that were maintained and accounted for in the Continental Army. I can't even imagine how much they had for World War II. So here's a Rock Island produced M19-19A4 Browning machine gun. They also made M1917A1s. Moving next, we have the Super Bazooka from 1948 to 1950. Rock Island Arsenal's most publicized contribution to the Korean War was this 3.5 M20A11 rocket launcher, or the Super Bazooka. The technical responsibility of this weapon was assigned to Rock Island Arsenal in 1948, and the fabrication was contracted to Bertman's Electric Company in Rock Island, Illinois. The first shipment of Super Bazookas was air transported from the Quad Cities airport 13 days after the U.S. troops were ordered into battle. 1 week later, on the 20th of July 1950, these weapons knocked out 7 Soviet-built Korean tanks. Then this we are looking at is the Little John. In 1955, Rock Island Arsenal R&D came up with this helicopter transportable launcher for the 318 millimeter Little John rocket. So yeah, that is a helicopter transportable launcher. And yeah, so this was developed for air assault operations and could carry either a nuclear or a conventional warhead. But besides the bazookas and the portable nuclear weapon launchers, they also are producing these like lightweight airborne rifles. They're producing lightweight guns to go on aircraft, trying to reduce the weight and also provide that firepower. They even go in and work on the M16E1 with this Burton bump, which from my looks at it, this changes the brass deflector. I think that's a pretty sick camouflage job, if I do say so myself, though. But Rock Island Arsenal is very... So throughout the Vietnam War, Rock Island Arsenal was a hub of small arms development. They also developed this flechette firing weapon that was supposed to be supplemented by a grenade launcher. Rock Island Arsenal's Weapons Command received the project in 1962 as part of the Organization of Army Material Command. This thing is pretty crazy. So it shoots flechettes, and it's pretty interesting. So they would go on, they make an officer's general's pistol right there. They do the M203 grenade launcher, and then you can see all the different types of magazines that they're coming out with, all the different types of plastic ones. I'll let you know, plastic magazines didn't really work out too well, at least for the AR platforms that I know of, especially for those at the time. Later on, you got better. This was part of the museum that I found pretty cool because it kind of starts to tie into my time in the service indirectly. So this is a Mark 14 Enhanced Battle Rifle, or an EBR-RI for Rock Island. Basically, it's a souped-up M14 with a new stock and a new barrel. But yeah, these saw use in Afghanistan. They provide you that ranging distance. And then you know, big things in Iraq and Afghanistan was the ID threat and having to do up armor packages. So during the Iraq War, they came in and started making armor packages. This one's for a Humvee. What really sticks out to me is that how to open that door. You just go and pull up that tab. I think that's from the original Humvees, but when you add all that weight on that, I would actually break that tab off pretty easily. So by the time I was around Humvees in 2010 or so, you actually had a big, heavy turnstile. I don't even know what to call it, like a lever. But yeah, so we're going to be looking at, and then as you end up, or you finish out the museum, they have this cool little exhibit about these weapons found at the Battle of Little Bighorn. This is a cut down model of 1870. I'm sure 11 Bang Bang would like to see this, since he just did a bunch of videos on these. But yeah, so these are trap door guns collected from the Battle of Little Bighorn. This one obviously has seen a lot of use, and it's been put through the ringer, so to say. And then, so following the Battle of Little Bighorn, they decided to really focus on marksmanship. So Rock Island Arsenal is actually very important in creating targets. You know, something that you don't really think about, we kind of take for granted today. But yeah, they went through the whole process. They went through and started creating targets, the different plates to provide it. If you've been in the Marine Corps, you should be able to recognize these. I think those are exactly the same that we would shoot on our known distance qualification ranges. And there's the metal printout that you would use to make said targets.
So we just left the museum, and I'm going to kind of do more of the history that's on the common grounds here at Rock Island Arsenal, to include right in front of the U.S. First Army's headquarters. You have this, I think it's a Hellcat, an M18 Hellcat, or maybe it's a 3-inch gun carriage. I don't quite know. My World War II armor is not as good as it should be. Over there we have a half track, and the part that's really interesting me is that across the way, which I'm about to take you, is a artillery park, and they have a German World War II Nebelwerfer over there. So I actually ran the Quad City Marathon about 7 or 8 years ago, and we ran straight down this road. But I actually have never been to the arsenal to look at all the other history. I just kind of ran by back in the day. But yeah, let's go look at all that cool artillery over there and see what we can learn. So here we are at the artillery park. We have all sorts of guns from all sorts of history. Right here on the right, it's an 8-inch model M55. We have a BMP over there. That's obviously a capture. I wonder who took this. I'm gonna guess Iraqi. After the Gulf War, a lot of captured Iraqi equipment was brought back. This is USSR Iraq BMP Model 1, 1970. That's when you actually went to war and brought back war trophies. That would be pretty cool if we did that today. But yeah, we have an Iraqi BMP 1, and as we continue to move along, we have all different pieces of historic artillery, American as well as foreign, at the park. 105 howitzer, the Honest John. This is a surface-to-air rocket that could also carry a nuclear warhead on it. So it's going through the museum, you do see that kind of like post-World War II mix where they're trying to figure out like how can we use nuclear war or nuclear weapons on like rockets and artillery pieces, and Rock Island was pretty instrumental in testing that out. T-27, that's probably what you'd think would be on top of a, well, actually, I don't know. I'm not gonna say it because I don't know. You probably can see those in the back of like the GMC trucks in World War II. We have a T-66 4.5-inch multiple rocket launcher. So America actually did use a lot of rocket launchers during World War II. If you ever watched the To the Shores of Iwo Jima, the documentary, not the movie, they show all the artillery all the rocket artillery that's fired at the island, also before they hit Omaha Beach. M5, this is a 3-inch anti-tank gun. So this thing is very effective and it fired armor piercing. Everyone knows the infamous German 88s, but America also produced the 3-inch, which is 105 millimeter. Well, actually, combine the high velocity of a 3-inch anti-aircraft gun with the field carriage of the 105, so it's a 3-inch gun on a 105 carriage. We have the XM70. Anytime you see X, usually means experimental. It was developed for the Marine Corps. This launcher is serial number 5, so it doesn't seem like it ever went into mass production. And this is the piece that really caught my eye. It's a German Nebelwerfer 41. So Nebelwerfer means smoke projector. This 6-barreled rocket launcher was standard equipment in the German army during the Second World War. It was called the Moaning Mimi. If you've ever seen footage of these things shooting, it goes like, and that, I'm not gonna do that again, but that is what they sound like if you want to go through those old footage. It was called that because of how the sound it made. It was fired electrically by remote control at a rate of 6 rounds every 90 seconds. It was one of the most effective and sophisticated pieces of artillery in the Second World War, according to this. So yeah, you'd put it in here, and then it would be electrically fired. They always covered up with that kind of protection. But yeah, as we keep moving along, we have other pieces of rocket artillery. Right here we have the USA T-88. It's a 7.2-inch multiple rocket launcher. It's experimental, built in 1942, was used extensively during the Second World War, and launchers were mounted on tanks, trucks, amphibious vehicles, landing craft, or light towed carriages. I don't think this is what was on top of the Shermans. Are those the canopies? I don't know, but the ones on the canopies seems wider, but I've never seen an actual Sherman with the canopy on top of it. And we just move around. You have just more experimental. This is a 105, a 155, and as we move forward, so all the like mentioned, they do talk a lot about the history of Rock Island Arsenal and the development stage of like how to fix things, how to change things, new ideas. We've already kind of gone through that at the museum. Yeah, here we go. Is an experimental weapon and fitted with an auxiliary propulsion engine to be standard M105 light-towed howitzer. The adaptation was to provide built-in mobility. Was an unsuccessful experiment. So, you know, every time you do win a couple, you'll lose a couple. Actually, you probably lose a lot more than you win. But we keep going. Is experimental weapon, another one, another experimental. 102, 105 light howitzer. Here we go. Developed towards the end of the Second World, the anti-tank, the M1945 D44 anti-tank gun was used by the Soviet bloc nations until the late 1970s. It was the same 85 gun found on the T-34-85. Those actually were pretty prevalent at the end of World War II. Those replaced the T-34-76s with the smaller gun. So this is actually a Soviet gun. You can actually kind of see these being used in Ukraine. I've seen footage of these being used. But the Iraqis would have had, most Soviet nations would have had a very effective anti-tank gun. You have your M1 Bofors. That's the one that recoils, that looks like something out of Star Wars. Bofors are such a cool gun. Actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but both the Americans and the Germans used this. It's a Swedish gun, if I recall, used Bofors on their ships in World War II. The M51 Sky Sweeper, after the Second World War, it was manufactured rocket. It could fire 45 rounds per minute. So just more anti-tank. This is, you see these things. It's actually called the Thing. Ontos is Greek for the Thing. Light mobile anti-tank system mounting 6 106mm recoilless rifles, developed in the 1950s and designed by Direct Sea to Land Invasion. It was adopted by the U.S. Marine Corps and saw service in Vietnam. You see this in all sorts of Vietnam War footage of these things going off. These things are that's an angry looking, fun little thing. And it's just adorable with how big those rockets are, or the recoilless rifles are. M4A3 Sherman. So, standard tank of the Second World War. This tank was assigned to the 4th Armored Division and was disabled by German gunfire during the Battle of the Bulge. Additional armor plate applied to the front and the turret of the tank was partially successful. Several enemy anti-tank rounds ricocheted harmlessly. One enemy round bounced off the armor and destroyed the gun barrel. Look at this. This is obviously added on for additional protection. I don't know if you can really see that. That is, what is that? About 3.5 inches of additional armor plate. I wonder if that's from the hit, or these are the hits that it took during the Battle of the Bulge that disabled it. Look at that chunk that just came off it. Look at that barrel. This thing, I kind of wonder what's hitting it, you know, to do this. Look, I guess look at this additional 1 to 3 inch armor plate on top, on this front slope right here, on top of this already. So you have like 6 to 7 inches of armor right there. That's a lot. The World War II tanks you see, like most of them you see at around, they don't have this additional armor plate on it. I know there's a Easy 8 nearby in Waterloo, Iowa that does not have this additional armor plate. Look at that, and then it's over here. I think this is because that's where, well, you got your driver right there, so that provides extra protection for your driver. You can see how they welded in those plates around the turret up there to give more protection for everyone inside the turret. So let's go over and look at this rail gun. So here we are in front of this experimental rail gun. This thing weighs 47 tons. It can fire a conventional or a nuclear shell up to 18 miles. This is the M65 atomic cannon. It was replaced by more reliable rockets during the 1960s. I wonder if you've seen that infamous footage, I'll probably post it here, of that artillery piece firing. I wonder if it is this. It looks like it. You've seen it where it shoots and the gun recoils and you wait about 30 seconds, and off in the background a mushroom cloud happens at like some training grounds out west in like Nevada or something like that. So I wonder if this is that same, maybe not that same gun, but that same type of gun. That is crazy to just launch in a atomic shells at each other. Thank God that never happened. So we'll be wrapping up here. The last part we're gonna be looking at is this 130 millimeter field gun produced by China. It was towed by a 6x6 truck, and it took a crew of 8 to 10 to service it. This one was captured during the first Gulf War. So we'll call that for the day. If you ever find yourself in or around Rock Island, Illinois, definitely make the trip over. It's not that far. To get onto the base, it is an active Army installation. You do have to do like a security check. You go through security. It's not a problem. I don't think foreign nationals can come through, but that might be wrong on that. But if you ever find yourself in or around Rock Island Arsenal, definitely make the trip over here. The museum has recently opened up since being closed for COVID and renovations. That, as you've seen, the museum is just full of history. And I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Anything history related, I'm definitely gonna be making for this channel. Mostly Revolutionary War stuff, but had the opportunity to be around here, so I thought, hey, why not make a quick little video about the Arsenal, show my friends, especially my history friends that love this sort of stuff that haven't been able to make it out. But that's all I have for the day. Hope you have a good one. If you like this content, like, subscribe, you know what to do, and take care. I just couldn't help myself. Driving out, I saw this cannon as well. This one is called La Perle. I actually think this one, there you see, Laperle. This looks like the Dolphins of France. So this one might be a French cannon. I need to actually look at this crest a little bit more to see if this is a French crest. What do I think this is? Let's say it's a 12-pounder cannon. But if you come back here, you can see May of 1762 is when this one was cast. It is Edouard par E. Beringer, right there. But I actually think this is a French cannon with these dolphins right here. So this could actually be Revolutionary War era. 1762, I mean, that's like tail end of the 7 Years' War. But yeah, here's another cannon. I initially thought it was a Spanish cannon, but I've seen these dolphins on French cannons. So I'm pretty sure this is a French cannon. But yeah, here's another cannon. Everyone loves cannons, especially historic cannons. They just hold up so well. This thing is over 250 years old. If it was made in 1762. And look at the condition of that cannon. So cool.